All right, let me take this across to my guests tonight. Bharat Karnad, strategic affairs expert, and Colonel Dinny, defense expert. Both of them join us tonight on the show. Good evening. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for talking with Mirror Now. Bharat Karnad, to you first. This is not the first time that we are seeing China being its notorious self. In fact, in April last, only India rejected the Chinese claim of attempting to rename 11 places in Arunachal Pradesh. But this coming ahead of the G20 summit, when global leaders and experts are expected to be in India, to gather in New Delhi and work towards solutions of common challenges with, interestingly, the Chinese President Xi Jinping also in attendance. What explains this kind of a move?
Well, look, this is sort of this traditional Chinese cartographic aggression. They've done so for the last 50 odd years. The point is, I think they have a very definite idea, which is the 1959 line as the border, as the Sino-Indian border. And that's what they're going to stick to. We haven't been as particular in sticking in that we claim as our own. To us, it is a negotiable kind of subject. And that's where the difference is, because, a side that sticks to its notion of territory, vis-a-vis another side that is prepared to negotiate, then the onus is on the side that negotiates to do something about it, and you can't because the side that claims a very definite line that it is stuck to from 1959 onwards, from 1953, when they first Zhou Enlai Nehru exchanges, you see that they have the advantage. The other thing you say is, Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi met in Johannesburg and so on. The Johannesburg meet was not really substantial, sort of a courtesy, a high sort of a meeting. So it really doesn't count as far as substantive meetings go. But the fact of the cartographic aggression is a fact of life that somehow the Indian Ministry of External Affairs seems not to have reckoned with all these years. I've always said, to counter the cartographic aggression, we have to, for instance, counter in kind, which is, for instance, begin showing Tibet in a different color, because it's occupied Tibet. Our statements ought to reflect the fact that the Chinese have occupied Tibet. It's not an integral part of Tibet any more than Arunachal Pradesh is, if I may say so. But the fact is, we have given way from Nehruvian times. We accepted Chinese suzerainty originally, and lately sovereignty, because they haven't contested it. And this is something that I've always said requires to be countered. And you cannot do it in a fashion where we are more sensitive and mindful of Chinese sensibilities, while they ride roughshod over our claims and our beliefs of where our border lies. This is what is the real problem, that we really have been, shall we say, negligent for 70 odd years in saying, well, this is the line, and we are prepared then to not just stick by it, but to push you back to that line. Because here we are doing really nothing, even as they creep in.
All right,
to our
let me
territory
take
as
this
they've done.
across to Colonel Dinny, who in fact has been part of several counter-terror operations in the Northeast as well as Jammu and Kashmir. Colonel Dinny, do you reckon with this, the fact that India has not been very aggressive in its stance against China, we have been conducting meetings after meetings to solve the LAC, the border conflict with China. And on one hand, China talks about disengagement and resolving this conflict at the border. But on the other hand, it is coming up with the so-called standard maps where it's showing Indian territory as its own.
Ma'am, I do agree partially with what Mr. Bharat Karnad said, that it is a cartographic aggression, and India for the last 70 years has not been very proactive, shall I say, in countering this cartographic aggression. On ground, yes, definitely, the army has done what it has to do, right from 1962 onwards till as we speak, what is happening in Eastern Ladakh. So on ground, what has to be done is being done on a regular basis. But unfortunately, that is not the case with China. China has regularly done this cartographic aggression as part of its psychological warfare. Many don't understand that. Let's even speak of this particular thing which they have done now. Look at the timing. The timing fits in absolutely right, in the sense that there has been an interaction between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping in South Africa, and now they are moving into the G20 summit. And also, this particular time, the map changes is not only for India; it has been for the South China Sea. Taiwan has been made part into into Chinese. So it's a message not only for India; it's also a message for US and for all the the countries in South China Sea and all other across the globe. So that is the number one point, that before the G20, they want to send in a message. Others, they could have just avoided this particular thing right now, but they want to send a message, and that's, I think, it's a poor attempt of cartographic aggression at this point of time. That is the number one point. Rest, as we say, they have an issue of continuously changing their perception of LAC. It's very easy. Nobody today can exactly say where exactly is their LAC. Even I think the Chinese themselves, if they go into history, then the claims and the changes which they have done it's phenomenal. But India, as far as is concerned, on ground, again I repeat that we have been able to do whatever we have. But in diplomatic means, as Mr. Bharat Karnad said, I think we need to be a little more aggressive when to counter this. And one thing, with the suggestion which he gave was this, start showing Tibet as independent. One such thing, which I don't know whether the government will take that step, but I also believe that the time has come now for us to reply the cartographic aggression in kind, because it definitely affects the perception of the citizens. It affects the fact that we are having this discussion today means that people in India start believing that, okay, this particular area has gone, this is now become gone into Chinese territory and all that. And even the international countries which are friendly to India, even they are confused that which is the actual part of India. So I think time has now come to take a hard stand on this cartographic aggression, like what we are doing in Ladakh on ground. Like whatever Chinese did, we have given them in kind in Ladakh. Similarly, I think time has come to do that as far as this particular psychological warfare or cartographic aggression is concerned.
Yeah, interesting points there, Colonel Dinny. Bharat Karnad, apart from cartographic aggression, we are seeing Chinese expansionist policy playing out even online. The kind of narratives that are put up from the Chinese sites, from the Chinese accounts, are reflective of the fact that they're just taking forward the Chinese government's policy. But in terms of the changing geopolitical order, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war, how do you see this really panning out, and how do you see, the Western Bloc, the other South Asian countries? Because it's not just India. There are parts of, Taiwan, South China Sea, Vietnam, Brunei. All of these have been shown in this new map as part of Chinese territory. How do you see them countering China, really?
Well, let's not worry about how everybody. Let's begin countering China ourselves. We leave it to others to do our dirty work for us. And that's been our real problem, if I may say so. We want someone else to secure this border or that border for us. No one's going to do that. Taiwan will fight its own fight with China, assisted by the US. India will have to stand alone, because we made it quite clear vis-a-vis the Russian role in Ukraine that we don't want to have to do anything with the Ukraine conflict per se. And also, we mean to be on the right side of Russia as well, while keeping friendly relations with the West. Now, of course, that's going to be turned against us, in the sense that if there are hostilities against China, and no one's going to come to our help, as they didn't in the past. So, we have to get rid of this notion that the world owes us our security. The world owes you nothing. and we have to fight it ourselves, and we better begin doing so now, belatedly, 70 years later.
All right. Last word to you, Colonel Dinny. You know, you're somebody who has been, who has served in the forces. He's been part of, the security arrangement of the country and seen things closely, specifically to China. And like I said, China is not just doing this physically, geographically, cartographically. It's also doing it at several other levels. The first and foremost, and probably the largest influence being the cyber world, using the cyber world, the online narratives and all of that simultaneously happening with the kind of expansionist steps that China keeps taking. How can we really counter that in terms of our on-ground security situations and even otherwise?
Ma'am, I think already I can see a lot of things happening right now. Like as I mentioned, that whatever issues which was done, or rather whatever the aggression which the Chinese had done in Ladakh, that was given a reply there itself. I understand that even now as we speak, there is the negotiations are on for two more friction points out of the 7, 5 have been resolved. And as I understand, this resolution has happened with a prejudice to our claims. So the delay is because in these two places, Depsang and Demchok, we are not yet satisfied with the way the kind of disengagement and the kind of final outcome we want is still not being achieved. That is why this kind of delay is there. So at that particular point, and the kind of forces which are already there in Aksai Chin area, which is adequate, about 60,000 troops are already there. So force to force, everything has been matched on ground. But and even on diplomatically, I think you will see a lot of changes happening. Like the foreign minister was quite blunt today, if I can put it that, calling out Chinese about this particular cartographic aggression. But as mentioned by Mr. Bharat Karnad, I also agree that there is a lot of things which need to be done at multiple levels. Like you also mentioned that there is something happening at the cyber level, there's something happening at the diplomatic level, at the economic level, and all those things are there. So everything is interlinked. It is not a standalone strategy which Chinese does. So therefore, we have to also think on all those lines. And I think that there is an understanding at the highest level that it has to be engaged. The Chinese has to be engaged at multiple levels. We are moving towards it. Have we reached that level where we can give a massive counter to Chinese at this particular point? I feel no. We have still there's a lot of things to be done. But somehow I think the understanding is there that China has to be tackled at multiple levels. I think a little more time will be required. But the Chinese are understanding that India has changed. India is changing, and no matter who comes to the government now, the things will not go back as was in 60s or even 80s and 90s, wherein a kind of a conciliatory approach was taken. I don't think the public opinion today will force any government to take a harder stand, and that's what I think India is doing.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, I'm going to wrap this discussion up. Colonel Dinny and Bharat Karnad, thank you very much, gentlemen, for talking with Mirror Now and sharing your perspective on this new cartographic aggression by China ahead of the G20 summit. Thank you so much.